Hey, Matt Hunkler here, and I'm super excited because I am with Ludovic Ulrich, who is the Director of Startup Relations for Salesforce, which of course is one of the largest software companies in the world. They're doing a ton to support startups, and Ludovic has been in the software and startup space for better part of a decade, just crushing it at places like Up Global, Startup Weekend, Microsoft, and before that even Apple. So Ludo, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Matt. It's a pleasure to see you again, this time on Skype.
Absolutely, man. Well, we've got some cool stories. We can spare the story about beignets in New Orleans for now, but maybe we can tease it and get back to it later in the conversation. Man, you have been all over the place and been so helpful in supporting startups, growing software companies. And one of the things I really wanted to make sure I talk to you about today is how you've gone about kind of building your network, because you've been doing an amazing job growing your network, and the people that you've introduced me to, even throughout the events that we've been at, have just been amazing. So I'm curious to know, for you, when you decide to go out and go to an event, like a conference or a pitch competition. Obviously, you get hit up all the time to go and attend those. What are the ones that catch your attention, and what makes an event really good?
Yeah, so it's a great question. Obviously, there is a lot of events going on, and so it's you need to do your homework, right? You need to study a little bit what's going on there, the audience, who they're targeting, who are the sponsors, who are the speakers, et cetera, et cetera. I think it's all about doing your homework for me. Like you want to at least almost spend as much time prepping the event as attending the event, making sure you anticipate who you're going to see there, depending on what kind of objective you have, right? In my case right now, I just want to make sure people know what Salesforce is about, how startups can actually leverage Salesforce. So I'm just going to try to identify some community leaders, some subset of groups, or interesting companies that might attend an event, and try to connect with them before, whether it's on Twitter or by email, to say, hey, are you going to be there? Maybe we can catch up. I'm lucky as well to work for a big brand, that's attractive to a lot of startups. So I happen to have a lot of people who wants to basically engage and, help get, a feeling of how to navigate with Salesforce, and so, that's also depends on your role. If back at the time, when I was at a global, I had to actually hustle and get like people to pay attention to, Startup Weekend and that great nonprofit that had an impact on the world, but how it could translate into a relationship, a partnership. I think now it's a different position here at Salesforce. But again, I would say that my key message is really to optimize before your prep, really to hustle and not be afraid of going to speak to the people you actually need to get something from. People go there really with a goal in mind. They want to network, mingle, so it should be pretty natural. And I think in the US, even more than in Europe, it's actually something that's happening pretty well.
Can you talk to me about your actual specific process? Like, how regimented are you about it? Are you like 2-3 weeks out before the event, or are you talking about just the day before? When should people be reaching out, and how do you actually do that? Like, do you have LinkedIn open in one screen and the conference website open on another screen, and you're connecting the dots? What's that like for you?
So I wish I had the time to do that as well as you're describing. It's a good idea, Matt. I mean, sometimes it ends up being to be the day before, or traveling to this event. Again, most of the time, I have a team as well around me who helps me as well organize. Sometimes we have press interviews and things like this. So, I don't do that by myself. It's just how to optimize, this travel. But I think to be very, very tactical, I see more and more conferences as well providing some apps who can actually make that, networking and that, basically try to minimize pure serendipity and making it more easy to actually connect with people who are connected with you on LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever. But again, I mean, just to make it very actionable, usually I post as well something on LinkedIn and Facebook. Hey, I'm going to be at this conference. Let me know if you want to connect and see what comes out of it, right? Again, I would argue that some of those events, it's almost like you want to hide actually, because there is going to be a lot of people and you let serendipity happen. Others where it's more of a place where you're not necessarily like well connected yet. You need to spend more time prepping.
That makes a lot of sense. Well, and you mentioned that now you're able to kind of leverage the fact that you're associated with a really large brand like Salesforce. Obviously, being the director of startup relations there, you probably get hit up a lot when you're attending the conference by startups who want to connect with you. And those startups might not have a brand that is well recognized as Salesforce. So, can you give me some examples of some creative things that entrepreneurs have done to get your attention? And obviously, you're always welcoming of all startup founders. And I know that, if you could spend your time with every startup founder in the world, you would. But the fact is, you can only spend your time with some people. So, what have startup founders done for you to get your attention to grab coffee or grab beignets or, grab a beer?
I, I've seen a lot of creative things actually, but frankly, I always really appreciate and want to reward people who spend their time also doing the homework. I happen to, I run a team called Startup Relations, but we have a very pragmatic kind of way to engage at scale, which is basically Salesforce for Startup. It's a program, it's online. So I really appreciate, first of all, when those startups check what's available online and have more advanced questions. Number two, it's always good to have companies who also have some skin in the game and they want to play in your ecosystem, whatever the ecosystem you represent, right? It could be a large tech company like Salesforce or Microsoft, or it could be just a smaller ecosystem in a specific industry. And when you have a founder who really did the homework, potentially build an MVP, a prototype, and has some very specific ask, it's always easier to help, right? Rather than, hey, let's meet. Based on the previous conversation that we have on, how to, mingle and optimize your conference, you don't want to mingle for the sake of it. At the end of the day, you still want to have some very action-oriented, ask. That are kind of easy to deliver on. It's the connection and things like this. And again, with all the tools that we mentioned, whether it's LinkedIn or others, you can actually indeed, try to triangulate the person you want to be connected with, right? So I think that's what I would say about this. And then it's also good, when as part of the homework, when founders use part of your technology portfolio, right? I mean, it's not a criteria to talk to another company, but when they're already part of the, the ecosystem, part of your family, part of your, let's say the ecosystem you want to accelerate or you want to help. I mean, it's always a plus, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there are a couple of words that you said I think that are really powerful, and one of those was allow serendipity to happen. And obviously, I'll be with you here in about a week and a half at the Salesforce for Startups conference, or the conference that's being put on by Salesforce for Startups. And I'm excited about that. I pretty much just plan to allow serendipity to happen and allow that to be a great experience. I know that I'll be able to interface with your team, and there will be a lot of great connections that happen. But you also mentioned, triangulation and finding a way to triangulate the person you want to connect with. What are some of the ways that people can, once they're at a conference, triangulate the person and allow serendipity to make those connections that will be powerful for their company?
Yeah, it's always getting an introduction is always better, right? There's a high chance that I will know most of the speakers at the conference, or one of my colleagues, or one of the leaders of Salesforce invited those particular speakers. So trying again to get an intro, or make sure you have someone in common, right? I mean, at the end, it's the same. It's the same way you would do for a sales process, right? I mean, I usually like to say that startup fail because they lack customers and not funding, right? We talk about funding a lot, but usually it's because they lack customers or they lack access to customers, and they lack that that common sense sometimes, and that energy they should put actually in trying to connect and triangulate with the right person. So it's actually I think you can apply a lot of the sales technique to that, right? I mean, whether you want to sell or just pitch or just get connected with someone, right? And this is actually the theme of that conference that you referred to, Matt. At Dreamforce, we basically create in San Francisco for a few days density. It's more than a sales conference or user conference. It's basically an industry event where everybody involved with, engaging with their customers, engaging with, marketing and customer service and sales. Anybody in the sales kind of world will be at this conference. So how to get there, try to identify those people you want to meet. And that's what we try to design with Startup Summit, is make it easy for startups. Specifically, if they live in the Bay Area, right? They can get to Dreamforce and cross the bridge or come down from Palo Alto. It's easy, but give an opportunity as well for startups around the country. And I know there is a contingent coming from Indianapolis and other part of the US, and make it easy for them to access to that event, which is more than 140,000 people, and not only learn from specific sessions, but also basically, get access to customers. Again, this is for me the key things for startups, and get access to customers. And frankly, at Dreamforce, you throw a rock somewhere, you're going to hit the customers or prospects, right? So you can try to triangulate, but honestly, there is density, and I think that's key for startups.
So when you're actually there, talk to me a little bit more about the Startup Summit. I'm going to the summit. I'm a startup founder. How can I make the most of that experience, particularly with that conference?
Yeah, I think I wouldn't underestimate first of all the learning part, right? I mean, we put a lot of attention in creating some great sessions, highly focused on what can I learn as a founder. That's really the question we had in mind when we defined those sessions. So we brought a lot of CEOs and founders and investors, from Silicon Valley and outside, who can actually share some very tangible advice and tips in the same spirit as this interview today. And we have basically specifically what we call the practical track. So you'll have the CEO of Glassdoor, for instance. We'll have a lead engineer at Product Hunt. We'll have the CEO of MuleSoft, and those guys will explain exactly how they run customer service, how they run sales, and things like this. Very tangible, peer-to-peer, founder-to-founder. And that's part of the learning, right? So that's what I would do. But we also have more of a thought leadership track, which is always good to get yourself inspired, right? When you do a trip, you're outside of you're far from your team, you're outside of your day-to-day life, and you can get inspired. And that's really the power of Dreamforce, and I hope the power of Startup Summit is that get that excitement. But then beyond being inspired, benchmarking what's going on, see the trends in the industry, and I would say learning. You also want to network, right? And so specifically for a Startup Summit, we have a reception on a Tuesday night on September 15th, sponsored by Salesforce Ventures, with all the Salesforce portfolio companies will be. We'll have a lot of friends and family from Salesforce there, whether they're investors or in the startup ecosystem. So I think this is a great opportunity to network. So again, I would say learn, be inspired, and benchmark, and see how we run events when we're a top large company like Salesforce, who was born in the cloud, innovating since 16 years ago. Learn from that and also network.
So you mentioned the speakers. I mean, all of those people that you mentioned are the kinds of people that probably a startup founder would want to connect with. And you yourself have been a speaker on a number of panels that I've seen, and I've seen some of your individual talks that you've given. As a speaker, how do you want to be approached? Or in the past, how have you approached speakers who are maybe presenting at the conference and you're like, hey, I actually really want to connect with this person. What's the best way to do that?
It's never very easy, right? Especially after a conference where you might have to go to somewhere else and stuff. But again, in the spirit of what you asked before, I think like just having an anecdote or really showing that you did your homework and have a clear ask. And if someone comes to me at the end of a presentation and say, "Hey, I built a prototype. We have some early traction with customers. I really want to make sure I'm part of the Salesforce ecosystem and understand how we can become formally a partner beyond the resources available on your website, Salesforce Startup." I think, how can you say no to that, right? It's like the right thing. And then I can exactly say, okay, where do you live? Do you live in Indianapolis? Okay, great. Let me connect you with the right person who can actually manage the ecosystem over there and make sure we make an intro. So I would try to really be very concise and come up with an ask that's simple to execute on after the fact, right? And if during the session you happen to tweet at the speaker and, catch one of the phrases or one of the anecdotes that has been noticed, I think it's always good, right? How many speakers right after a session check what's going on and what's the chatter on Twitter about the session? So there's all kinds of tricks, right?
Well, that's a really good point. Just being engaged in the social conversation and being someone that's sharing what's going on, adding to the conversation, retweeting appropriate things with the right hashtags. That's something I've seen you actively engaged with, whether on the Rise of the Rest competition or at an industry convention like Dreamforce.
Yeah, yeah. And Matt, you need to be realistic as well. We have Aaron Levy, CEO of Box, who's going to do the keynote at the Startup Summit on September 15th in San Francisco. Is probably going to have a long line waiting for him. So, is it really the right person you need to talk to for your company, or you need to talk to someone who is in charge of whatever, the API or something like this? Just try also to be realistic, right? For me, I'm very happy to engage with anyone, right? But if someone comes to me and talk about a funding discussion, I'm not an investor. I have my teams of colleagues who do run Salesforce Ventures. It's just going to be a bad start, right? I mean, let's try to have it's always good to have a conversation on the area of expertise and what you can actually, help with.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I've also found too, if you're trying to connect with the founder of Box, probably talking to him right after his keynote is not the best time because that's when the most noise is. So if that's absolutely the person you must talk to, maybe it's a good idea to show up to the networking event and, find him at the bar when he's grabbing his first or second drink, or find out what he's drinking and grab his second drink for him.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
That's a really great point. Well, talk to me a little bit more. You told us a little bit about the Startup Summit, but talk to me a little bit more about the program Salesforce for Startups, because I know there's a lot of large companies that are trying to engage with startups, but obviously we're partnered with you guys. Verge is partnered with Salesforce, and it's becoming an even more stronger partnership because you guys are dedicating a lot of resources to helping startups. Tell me exactly kind of what you're doing and how you're doing it, and then also how do founders get engaged with what you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the question. So you see, Matt, I mean, at the end of the day, we want to make it easy for startup to engage with Salesforce, right? Salesforce has a great awareness within the startup community. We're very well known for our flagship CRM products, but we have many other technologies that could be beneficial for startups. And what they all have in common, and we make it easy for startups to engage with their customers. The customer engagement is great. I said before, startup failed not because they lacked funding, but customers. So how can we deal with that? That was the opening issue we wanted to deal with. When I joined the company, how can we do that and make it easy? And so what we do, if I have to summarize it, we help startups become better customer-focused company, but also community-focused company. And we do that in three ways. There is really the build aspect. So imagine you're a CTO. You want to start building your prototype, your MVP, and you need to pick a platform through Salesforce for Startup, which is a community online. We give you access to the platform. So for some of you might know a Roku. I know a lot of startups use a Roku, and probably some of your readers, or Force.com. So we give you access to get started there. Then when it comes to grow, we want to make sure we give you access as well to our core products to manage your CRM and sales process, of course, but also your customer success, like with a product like Desk.com, or your marketing automation with a product like Pardot, obviously Exact Target that became Marketing Cloud, one of the pride of the Indianapolis kind of a startup scene, right? And so obviously, and so we try to promote those products in a way where you can actually grow your company, use them, and get all the guidance around the product itself, right? We really don't focus only on the vouchers and the coupons, right? You don't want to choose a product just so you get like an offer for it. You just want to think as the company you want to become and not the company you have today. And so that's what we're trying to help you guide your journey. And last but not least, beyond helping you build and grow, I would finish with give back, right? Salesforce 16 years ago pioneered a model called the 1-1-1 model. I don't know if you're familiar with it, Matt. I think you heard about it, right? So it's basically all about putting 1% of your employees' time, 1% of your products, and 1% of your founding equity, and dedicate that to good causes, dedicate that to the community. And so Salesforce, together with Atlassian, Rally Software, and also the Entrepreneur Foundation of Colorado, built funded an organization called Pledge 1%. So we partner with those guys just to make sure that we actually promote that model and make it very simple for founders who want to give back. So again, that's kind of the program. And to join it, it's a free program. It's self-service. You can join at salesforce.com/startups.
That's awesome. I love it. I think, well, we're definitely going to link it up in the notes below.
Yeah, and you can use the referral code Verge, right? I mean, that's what we want your audience as well, is like use the referral code to get some special benefits as well when they join.
Oh, we love that. We love that. I mean, obviously founders love free stuff because resources are scarce when you're getting started. But growing on a platform like Salesforce that is the industry standard, whether you're a startup or a scale up or a ramp up, it's really cool to have that opportunity. So we'll obviously link that up down below with the code, but also the code that you provided for people outside the Silicon Valley area who might want to attend Startup Summit. We'll put that in the notes below as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Salesforce for Startup is basically the online version of what we're doing for startups. But all over the year, we actually organize on physical events, right? You're in this business as well, and hopefully we'll be together at one soon. Details to be announced. But the idea is to also, with Startup Summit, give an opportunity for people to discover Salesforce, learn from us, learn from our ecosystem, learn from key leaders in the ecosystem. And it's happening on the 15th and 16th of September in San Francisco. So we'll give you the code if you're interested in attending.
Well, I appreciate, Ludo, you sharing not just your wealth of knowledge about startups, Salesforce, and the different ecosystems that are out there, but also sharing your experience of attending and making the most out of industry events to help grow and scale your company.
Thanks very much, Matt, and thanks for sharing all that great data. I'm really passionate about helping startup not recreate the wheel, and have access to all those resources, creating that density that I mentioned, whether it's physical, online, or through nice media like you. So it was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. I'm sure we'll be doing a follow-up interview soon.
Absolutely.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
man.
Want more secrets from inside the minds of entrepreneurs and innovators around the world? Subscribe to our YouTube channel here and click the link below. We'll send you our best interviews and strategies for growing your business.